Welcome back to the History of. On today's episode, we're looking into how the Catholic Church reacted when the Jehovah's Witness congregation was first founded. And trust me, it wasn't friendly. In the late 1800s, when Charles Taze Russell began challenging long-held teachings like the Trinity and eternal hellfire, the Catholic Church saw it as a dangerous rebellion. Just like in Acts 7:54-58, where Stephen was stoned for preaching a new message, early Jehovah's Witnesses faced harsh criticism and rejection. And just like Jesus warned in Matthew 10:22, "You will be hated by everyone because of me," these early followers were labeled heretics, cultists, and rebels, yet they kept preaching anyway. So, without wasting more time, let's jump right into it. In the late 1800s, when Charles Taze Russell and his small Bible study group in Pennsylvania started teaching that the Trinity was false, the Catholic Church was quick to act. Catholic leaders weren't just upset, they were alarmed. The idea that Jesus wasn't equal to God, as Russell claimed, went completely against the Council of Nicaea's teaching in 325 AD, which declared the Trinity as core Christian truth. Catholics viewed Russell's group as rebellious and dangerous, especially because they were quoting the Bible to back their claims, like John 14:28, where Jesus says, "The Father is greater than I." What made this even more shocking was that Jehovah's Witnesses believed organized religion, including the Catholic Church, was part of Babylon the Great, the false religion mentioned in Revelation 17. To Catholics, that was blasphemy. Witnesses began handing out tracts accusing churches of misleading people and even working with political systems. One of Russell's most controversial writings was called "The Time is at Hand," where he suggested the end of the world had already started in 1874 without any visible sign. That was too much for many religious leaders to ignore. Even though the Catholic Church didn't mention Jehovah's Witnesses by name at first, Vatican officials began issuing warnings about new cults twisting the gospel. By 1914, after the witnesses predicted Jesus' invisible return, Catholic bishops in America and Europe began calling the group heretical in official church bulletins. While the Catholic Church had battled Protestant ideas for centuries, this new group felt different because it didn't even call itself Christian in the traditional way. In the early 1900s, Catholic writers and theologians began producing essays and pamphlets attacking Russell's teachings. They called him a false prophet and criticized his lack of formal training. Most people didn't know that Charles Russell never went to seminary. He was actually a clothing store owner before starting the Bible student movement. Catholics used that fact to question his authority, saying he had no right to interpret scripture for others. But what made their attacks sting even more was that Russell's ideas were spreading fast, especially in poor working-class neighborhoods where Catholic churches had a strong presence. A lesser-known detail is that Russell's early tracts didn't just attack Catholic teachings, they questioned the entire structure of organized religion. In his magazine Zion's Watchtower, Russell wrote that priests and pastors were keeping people in the dark about the Bible. He used Matthew 23:9, where Jesus says, "Do not call anyone on earth your father," as proof that calling Catholic priests father was unbiblical. Catholic defenders clapped back hard, accusing Russell of twisting verses out of context. The debate grew louder, and Catholic newspapers like the Pilot in America began issuing warnings about this new American heresy. By 1910, Some Catholic scholars even claimed that Jehovah's Witnesses were not just wrong but dangerous. They compared the Watchtower Society to the early Gnostics, ancient groups that mixed truth with lies. One bishop in New York warned his flock that the Jehovah's Witnesses were wolves in sheep's clothing, referencing Matthew 7:15. These public warnings made some Catholics curious, while others doubled down on defending their faith. What made the situation even more intense was that Jehovah's Witnesses didn't avoid Catholic neighborhoods. They went straight into them. In cities like Boston, Chicago, and New Orleans, where Catholic churches stood tall on nearly every street, witnesses began preaching from door to door. They offered Watchtower literature and free Bible studies to anyone willing to listen. Many Catholics slammed their doors shut. Others got into loud debates on their porches, quoting scriptures back and forth. One of the most quoted verses by witnesses at the time was Exodus 20:4-5, which warned against the use of graven images. To them, Catholic statues of Mary and the saints were violations of that command. The Catholic Church saw this as a spiritual invasion. Some priests told their members not to speak to Jehovah's Witnesses at all, warning that even a short conversation could confuse the simple-minded. Catholic schools in places like Pennsylvania and Ohio began adding short lessons about modern cults in their religion classes. Students were taught how to answer Jehovah's Witnesses using scripture, especially John 10:30, where Jesus says, "I and the Father are one." But what few people know is that in 1919, after World War I, the Watchtower Society sent out thousands of free booklets worldwide titled The Finished Mystery, attacking Catholic teachings even more boldly. The Catholic Church in Canada and parts of Europe banned the book completely. But the more they tried to silence the movement, the more curious people became. Jehovah's Witnesses weren't going away, they were just getting started. By the 1920s and 30s, the tension had escalated from words to real-life confrontations. In heavily Catholic towns, in Ireland, Mexico, and even the United States, Jehovah's Witnesses faced angry crowds. In Quebec, Canada, witnesses were arrested and beaten simply for handing out leaflets. The Catholic Church didn't tell people to attack them directly, but many local leaders stirred emotions by preaching fiery sermons, warning that these new groups were sent by the devil. One priest in Boston called them spiritual termites, eating away at the walls of the church. In those early days, Jehovah's Witnesses rarely fought back. Instead, they viewed themselves as martyrs, just like the apostles in Acts 5:41, where it says, "They rejoiced that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name." This mindset only made them more determined. In fact, some early witnesses kept preaching even after being thrown in jail. They believed they were fulfilling Jesus' words in Matthew 24-14. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world, and then the end will come. One often overlooked story involves a young witness in Mexico who was dragged out of his home by a Catholic mob for refusing to salute the flag and was later imprisoned. His courage inspired others to remain loyal, no matter the cost. Jehovah's Witnesses began keeping detailed records of persecution, which they would later use to prove how they were being treated unfairly both by governments and the church. As Jehovah's Witnesses grew in number, especially during the Great Depression, the Catholic Church started viewing them as part of a wider spiritual crisis. In 1949, the Vatican issued a document called Decretum de Sectis, warning Catholics about false religions. While it didn't name Jehovah's Witnesses specifically, church insiders knew they were one of the main targets. The document said these groups preyed on the poor, the confused, and those angry at organized religion, offering them a simple Bible and a false sense of truth. Behind the scenes, the Catholic Church also began studying why people were leaving to join groups like Jehovah's Witnesses. They discovered that many converts felt the Catholic Church was too ritualistic and disconnected from the Bible. Jehovah's Witnesses, on the other hand, offered a clear message about God's kingdom, using verses like Daniel 2:44, which says God will set up a kingdom that will crush all others. That message, during times of war and poverty, gave people hope. Even today, the Catholic Church considers Jehovah's Witnesses a theological challenge. They may not have huge cathedrals or political power, but their door-to-door preaching, Bible use, and bold rejection of Catholic teachings continue to create tension. What started as a small Bible study in Pittsburgh turned into one of the most controversial religious movements the Catholic Church has ever faced.